Well, Diana, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it is clear this topic is really, really close to your heart, and it's a critical topic for us to be talking about. We're talking about human trafficking and modern day slavery. And it's also clear that modern day slavery, especially among young women and girls, is happening right here in the United States, not just in other parts of the world. So we're going to explore that today. But first, I thought it's always helpful for my guests to share a little bit about your background. Talk about what prompted you first to go into this work, because I understand through your story a bit that your motivation came from a research trip when you went to Cambodia, and you personally witnessed young children being trafficked and sold. And that really convinced you of the urgency and the necessity for action on this issue. So tell us a little bit more about your story today.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking.
You bet.
Um, I would say it was very accidental. I was a research fellow for a microfinance bank
Okay.
and charged with interviewing microfinance clients in Cambodia. And when I traveled to some of the rural areas, just to kind of give you context, it would take a car, an SUV, a motorcycle, and then walking through muck, leech infested muck to get to some of these communities where microfinance clients lived. And it was in a village near the Thai border where I met a single father with 7 children. And he, after we had surveyed him, we knew he had barely one meal to eat per day for his 7 or 8 children,
Wow.
and living in a hut with no bed, no running water or electricity, and lost his wife to malaria.
Oh
After
my.
we surveyed him, he offered my male colleague his youngest daughter in broken English, "You like her, you take her." And we were both horrified and shocked that he made that proposition. And we left just really disheartened, learning he was still living off of 75 cents, if that at all, per day, and trying to feed his children while simultaneously being in the city where we stayed, our hotel was based, and seeing very old foreign men mostly gallivanting the streets with young children in 2007. So
Okay.
that really struck a chord and opened my eyes to the issue. And the more I researched, the more I talked to practitioners and organizations, the more I realized that this is addressable from the economic perspective. And that's what really lured me into wanting to fight this huge issue, global issue. And personally, myself coming from really learning about my own father's trauma, being in labor camp in China,
Okay.
and due to his family's prominence. I know labor camp is very different than, human trafficking, but some of the same similar conditions of control, forced to work with no pay in squalid conditions, and really seeing the impact on his life and how it impacted my siblings and I um, really also kind of gave me a deeper meaning to why I'm in the fight against human trafficking.
Well, again, thank you for sharing a bit of your personal story, and it's obvious that that motivates you, and you're very motivated in what you do. And thanks for all you're doing. I also want to, reiterate what I mentioned on the outset of this podcast. For my listeners' sake, you may be really surprised to learn that more than 27 million people are in forced labor right now. 17 million among those are exploited in the private sector, and 6 million in forced commercial sexual exploitation, according to the report from the Global Estimates of Modern Slavery, and that was in September 2022. So, first of all, I think it'd be important to dispel the myth that human trafficking and slavery is not happening in the United States. Give us a quick overview of how prevalent this is right here in the US.
Yeah, it's quite prevalent in the sense recently the Global Slavery Index issued a report that in the US there's approximately 1 million people in human trafficking. And
Okay.
it's a little bit different in the sense that you can't, it's not as evident. You are in India, Cambodia, you see children being paraded on the streets and in brothels, sadly. But in the US, it's really hidden in the sense that a lot of times it's children aging out of foster care, homeless youth, runaway youth. Those that are most vulnerable in the United States are susceptible to human trafficking and sadly get exploited.
Wow. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing those stats. And now, more of a philosophical question, I guess. Why is it more difficult for people to grasp how big of a problem it is right here in the US? And then how can we mitigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in the US, because a trafficking hotspot area, looks very different in the sense that it's tucked away, as I mentioned, in some of these systems. And we see, individuals, their basic Maslow's hierarchy of need being met, shelter, food, water. Most people in the United States, I will say, although some communities obviously do not have access to potable water, but
Right.
generally speaking, we have our basic needs met, and we're really moving towards like actualization, our hopes and dreams and realizing those things. Whereas in communities like rural India, you see that people are living in, very squalid conditions without access. So that could be really deceptive in the sense that, oh, it just simply doesn't happen here. It happens overseas, in Africa and Asia. But if you really peel back the onion, it happens here. And I'll just give you a quick example. I was shopping at Costco this week, and
Okay.
a young boy approached my husband and I. It was dusk, so basically night. And he asked if he could wash our car. And this young boy, I mean, he, looked no more than 10 years old.
Wow.
And, you know, based on what I know, because I'm in the anti-trafficking field, I know that those oftentimes in New York City, on subways, selling candy, asking for money on the streets, many times those are actually they're forced or coerced to do that by criminal network. So what I know about human trafficking, most likely this young boy was being manipulated or coerced into washing the car, and getting, in essence, begging for money.
Right.
So if you open your eyes, it's there,
Yeah.
and I think for us, awareness is key in the United States.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for the example right there in your own backyard, so to speak, at Costco, which I know many people, many listeners, they go to Costco all the time. So thanks for that, making it very personal. Now, as we think about the broad issue of human trafficking, would you say that poverty and economic marginalization are really the two primary drivers that cause particularly women and girls to be the most vulnerable for exploitation, or are there other factors?
Yeah, I would say those are the primary factors for
Okay.
women and girls, globally. In places like rural India, girls are pulled out of school as young as in the third grade. They're not given economic opportunity. In some areas in rural India, they're seeing not much even worth in terms of an animal or livestock. So the
Wow.
devaluation of women and girls, I would say, in countries where there are just a lower, standard of living and less education, that's what really drives the issue at large. I would say also, just sort of the mindset, that individuals are disposable in these
Yeah.
communities as
Yeah.
well. On top of the layer of economic justice, I would
Right.
say that's an additional lens.
That's so interesting. Okay. No, thanks for saying that. And now, with your work there at Nomi, you not only are dedicated to rescuing people from human trafficking, but you're a big believer that by creating pathways to safe employment and economic stability, you're really actually helping to prevent trafficking while empowering women to rewrite the narratives for future generations. So tell us a bit more about how Nomi does their work.
Yeah, that's a good question. So globally, we focus on the most under-resourced areas with high incidences of human trafficking. So I say incidences because in India, it's not the most prevalent. However, with 1.2 billion people, they're, out of the global figure, they're half of the world's population of those in slavery are in India. So that's why we focus on India. We focus on really hotspot areas where there's high incidences,
Okay.
and under-resourced in globally means lack of potable water, electricity, and basic needs are not being met. In
Okay.
the United States, we work within a juvenile detention center. And you're probably wondering, how is that a hotspot? Well, thanks to the justice system, we're able to identify girls who are caught up in the justice system, brought in on counts of prostitution as young as 10 years old.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
how we focus on the most acute system in the US, and we work in that system to get girls out of that cycle and into career pathways. So we set up our workforce development program, whether it's in the juvenile detention center or whether it's in a rural community that is within the red light district in India or Cambodia, for example. And
Okay.
we have a program that ranges from 6 months to 12 months, which includes life skill training, technical skill training, career exploration, getting women and girls into a career, into an internship in about 20 different sectors. And so we work closely with the private sector. India's largest manufacturer, we place women and girls out of the north part of India where there's high incidences into the south where there's more prosperity and more manufacturers. So we help them safely migrate to those jobs or stay in the community and find the jobs within the community to place women into gainful employment.
Right. No, well done. And again, congratulations on all your hard work with that. Now, continuing on the work that Nomi does, you specifically also provide ways to really help fuel confidence. You do this through financial literacy, affirmation center training. You also address barriers to work that include technical skills providing, job readiness skills that you provide. Could you share more about the specific programs you're implementing?
Yeah, absolutely. So really the core tenement is workforce development in 3 phases, and we contextualize it for places like Northern India, where there's systemic violence against women and girls. So the training changes to, we provide the workforce, but we also provide services around that, like rights, so that they know their rights. For example, in India, one particular state, they had an alcohol ban because there were high cases of domestic violence. Now, the women didn't know that there was an alcohol ban. And while their, quote unquote husbands were abusing them after, some issues with alcoholism, now after our training, they realized, wow, we could report this. This is not legal for them to even have alcohol, right? So what they don't know is what they don't know. So really the tenement is workforce, but we have periphery services around to strengthen the outcome of job placement, job retention, economic mobility. And then in India also, we provide adolescent girl training because we noticed a lot of girls were out of school, coming with their moms to the training program and, helping their mom, with some activities that, regularly we're like, where are the girls here and not in school? So that's when the adolescent girl program started, where we also concurrently run the program with the adult women program. And in Cambodia, we specifically choose an area with lots of cross-border trafficking in Poi Phet, where there's a huge industry around casinos, the gambling industry. So we do a lot of outreach there. And we also partnered with a Toyota affiliate to place women from rural areas in that area who were, prior to our program, migrating to Thailand and sadly ending up in very vulnerable circumstances where they're promised a job, but they end up being trafficked. But now the pipeline is going into our employment partners, Toyota, safe workplaces for women. So this gives you a kind of snapshot of our program.
No, very helpful. And do you do much with aftercare when you get, particularly with those who go through a sex trafficking? Do you pull them out for counseling and things like that after the fact?
We work with partners that provide more of the trauma counseling. We provide some legal services, but we partner with, drug addiction specialists. We really focus on the workforce side. And in particular, Dallas, we partner with about 20 different local organizations that are working with the youth on other outcomes, more of the social services. And so we really focus on more of the career pathways, educational pathways, getting them back in school, helping them get their GEDs. But most importantly, we help them once they leave the detention system. They always can pick up the phone and call our case manager. In fact, our case manager meets with them on a regular basis to make sure they have all that they need. Most cases, they don't have family support. So in essence, we become the resource that they go to if they need shelter, the resource they go to if they need food. We give them certificates to get food. So all of these things, we really become their biggest champion after they leave the detention system.
Okay. No, thanks for that. And, it's a huge problem. And I think when people learn about these stats and learn about all the folks that are in this terrible situation of modern slavery, how do you keep from not getting discouraged? Like, what keeps you moving forward? What gives you hope today to keep doing the important work you're doing?
Yeah, well, I travel a lot. I go to the areas, I talk to our clients. And so I think of women like Arti that in our program in Jharsuguda, just to get you kind of a sense, it's India's largest coal mining industry is in that region. You drive into that region and there's a cloud of smoke, and individuals that live in the rural areas just have no protection against these environmental externalities. So RT's mom, she actually is a day laborer at the coal mine. So if there is work, she earns no more than 75 cents, if that at all. Her
Wow.
father unfortunately left them at a very young age, her and her siblings. And so she was getting, when we first met her, she was getting prepared to be married off into a family. A lot of times that's where they get trafficked, because they get promised a marriage too, and they get trafficked. But
Okay.
instead, she was able to enroll in our program. And in 2022, she completed a workforce development training program, was placed at a employment partner of ours, earned $150 a month, and prior to that was earning nothing. And then
Wow.
recently she reported she's earning $200 a month, able to send money home to her mother. Her mother was able to upgrade their mud hut into a more concrete, more stable infrastructure for her and her siblings. And her
Fabulous.
siblings were able to re-enroll in school because of the proceeds from RT as well. So that is just one of the thousands of stories that keep me going and give me hope.
Wow.
And I really think back to the women that are really on the front lines. I'm, championing the work,
Yeah.
but I find it that they're the true sheroes that I really look to for inspiration.
Now, what a great example. And that is so encouraging. So again, thanks for all your work along those lines. Now, as you think about the next, say, 3 to 5 years, the challenges are daunting, as we've talked about. What are your BHAG goals, using Jim Collins' BHAG as a term for, what are those really big goals you're aiming for when it comes to Nomi's work, not just in the US, but just across the world?
Yeah. Yeah. So, in the anti-trafficking space, we are the only organization focused on employment opportunities at scale for survivors. So if we looked at
Yeah.
anti-trafficking, that's great. We're really many ways like killing it in the sense of getting women gainful employment out of the cycle. But there, as you know, staggering statistics. So my audacious goal is to, in the next 3 years, to move from 16 training sites in Asia and in the US to 50 training sites in the most high need regions
Wow.
globally, and to reach over 1 million women and girls. And that, definitely is quite scale, and in our sector, massive scale. But I really believe that if we can not just see the women earn income, but actually measure how that changes their community in terms of reduction of trafficking, connecting the dots between this intervention and reduction, which is very difficult, as you know, in human trafficking, we really will be able to see kind of the pendulum swing, and then more interventions like Nomi spring forth, more investment from stakeholders, government stakeholders, to make these investments into women and girls to be economically reaching their full potential. And then finally is to have every Fortune 500 company ready to hire survivors. Survivors do the job, but there's many gaps. But really, the Fortune 500 companies, I believe that they have the resources to carve out positions for survivors. And I want to work with them on that.
Oh, good stuff. For my listeners, again, I have on my show Diana Mao, who is the co-president, co-founder and president of the Nomi Network. So for people who are listening and they want to get to know you a little bit, find out more information about the Nomi Network, where would you send them?
Yeah, I would send them to our website, www.nominetwork.org. Also, add us on LinkedIn, add me on LinkedIn. My name is Diana Mao, so easy to find.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for listening. And also just simply by listening, I feel like you've been listed into the network of Nomi, and really supporting the Nomis of our world through your network and through your spheres of influence.
Yeah, you bet. Well, again, Diana, thanks for all your important work. It is critical work. Thanks for what you're doing. So glad that you're finding hope along the way and encouragement along the way. And thanks for taking time out to be on the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harder.
You bet. Absolutely.